Hello, Stina Marie. Can you believe it? 9 months of the year is gone, and we're approaching, well, the last 2.5 to 3 months before everybody goes on leave. But yeah, the 9 months is gone. How are you?
Hi Theo, I'm good, thank you. It's good to be back. Yeah, it's been a crazy year. I can't believe we this far into the year, and it feels like every time you open a news app or something, there's a new headline to kind of put a spin on things. Uh, but yet we're seeing good things. The rand's been strong, the markets are doing good. So maybe to start off with the rand, what is the biggest driver of the strong rand for the last few months?
Well, I think we need to be careful to talk about the strong rand. The rand is up around about 7% against the US dollar since the beginning of the year, but it's down about 6 odd percent against the euro. In effect, if you were to take let's say, more of a neutral currency, and you take the Aussie dollar, also a country with a very strong resource base, it's the same. It's actually not only the same levels, broadly speaking, than where it was at the beginning of the year, but it's the same levels where it traded roughly 5 years ago. So the rand has been stable against the Aussie dollar. And I think if you look at the last 6 months, since the beginning of the year, which is now 9 months, although the rand has strengthened against the dollar, it is weakened against the euro. But we need to appreciate, if you look at the last 50 years and you take the first 9 months of every year for the last 50 years, this is probably the weakest the dollar's been against a basket of international currencies. And why I say that is the dollar has lost about 10% against a basket of international currencies. Now, that is as one of the probably the weakest 5 odd years in the last 50 years. So we need to be very careful to say the rand strength. This is to a large extent a dollar weakening, and a dollar weakening for various reasons, of which interest rates is one, and the expectation of lower interest rates has been with us for a while in America. We are seeing that coming down. But it's also some kind of uncertainty around the policies and the impact of policies of the Trump administration, the risk that we perhaps might see more inflation coming through, the fact that the dollar has had a strong, not only 1 or 2, 3 years, but a strong, probably the best part of a strong decade. And I think those all come into play. So we cannot really say this is a strong rand. It is a strong rand against a weak dollar. But against the euro, the rand is weakened. And I do think we're more in line with some of the other currencies. And therefore, if you use something like the Aussie dollar as a reference point, we're at the same level we were at the beginning of the year. The euro, we're weaker. And I think that's a better indication of where the rand is. So the rand strengthened against the dollar, but weakened against the euro. And I think that gives you a bit of a better picture.
Thanks, Theo. And then looking at the markets, maybe starting off on the local market, I mean, we still have low economic growth and infrastructure problems and employment problems, and yet the market seems to be doing really well. So what is supporting the market at the moment?
Yeah, I think we need to look at this market in a nuanced way. Since the beginning of the year, the JSE All Share Index is up around 25%. That's a massively strong run against the background, as you note, weak economic growth and an inflation rate of between 3 and 3.5%. So that's a very strong real return. But if you dig a bit deeper into those numbers, and you divide the market into the three biggest segments that make up the JSE All Share Index, the resource sector, which is the miners, commodity players, the banks and financial sector, and the industrial stocks. If you look at the resource sector, that sector since the beginning of the year, that index has doubled. So therefore, the resources index is up more than 100%. If you look at the industrials is up around about 17%, and the financials is up only 3%. So one needs to be careful to put this into one number. That number is highly influenced by the very strong resource sector. Now, the risk with the resource sector is the fact that it can double in 9 months, it can halve in a few weeks. And that is the challenge with resources. Historically, resources are incredibly volatile, And yes, we're enjoying it. It's driving the market. It is giving us the great underpin for returns. But be very careful. Resource stocks can be very, very volatile. And just as fast as they can go up and underpin a market, they can also go down. Just on the 25% that we've been up since the beginning of the year, that is much higher than the norm. And it could mean that at some point we are now enjoying growth that we would have enjoyed over 2 or 3 years. And there is a risk that at some point we'll be paying for that in growth in coming years. So let's enjoy it. It's a great run, but be careful. It is not the norm. And number 2, it is underpinned by a sector that can be very volatile. So we just need to be slightly careful. In the meantime, it underpins our market, it underpins the portfolios, it underpins performance, but be careful. There is a risk inherently to a market driven by a resource sector. And we've seen that in the past.
And this type of risk that we're seeing, is that something that's present in the offshore market as well in a certain sector?
Yeah, the offshore market's got other risks that we need to be very careful. And if you look at the US market, the S&P 500 is up, let's say 13% if you add dividends, which is again a great run against inflation closer to 3%. So it is a great run. But the challenge in the S&P 500 is that we currently see the Magnificent Seven stocks. Now, these are the IT stocks, the big IT companies in the world that are primarily currently driven because of this AI, almost positive feeling about AI, artificial intelligence, what it will do, where it's going to, how it will change the world. That kind of theme is very strong. And those Magnificent Seven stocks currently makes up probably 34% of the S&P 500. So we need to be very careful. Again, that's a concentrated theme, a concentrated number of stocks. Now, we've seen that in the past. We've seen that from time to time in the US, not very often, but over the last 20, 30 years, it's happened a few times, that 3, 4, 5 times, that a number of stocks or a theme has dominated the market. The question then is, what happens if that theme starts to peter out, if that theme is perhaps over-optimistic of what the impact will be? That could then make markets a bit more volatile and could create a liquidity event of sorts, which means there could be a rebalancing. Now, if you look at the broader market, if you look at the Dow Jones, which are equally weighted in a sense of equally weighted 30 big stocks, the Dow Jones is up around about 8%. If you look at the Russell 2000, which is 2,000 smaller mid-cap in US terms. Now remember, a US mid and a small cap will be a large cap in South Africa. The average mid-cap in the US in rand terms is probably, in the Russell 2000, is probably about 65 billion rands worth of market cap. So it's a big company in our terms. But the Russell 2000 also up around about 8% since the beginning of the year. And I think that gives you a better idea of what the underlying market is if you were to take out that Magnificent Seven. Again, the fact that 7 stocks is more than a third of the S&P 500, again, creates the risk that should there be a theme change or a bit of a market rebalancing, we might see some of that sell-off. But Stina Marie, I've talked a bit about the rand, the currency side. I've talked a bit about South African market. I've talked a bit about the US market. But from a portfolio construction and a wealth advice point of view, what do you take from this?
Yeah, so I think we've spoken about all the risks. So before we scare all the clients away, maybe to chat about how we protect against these risks. And I think we've said it time and time again, but it really comes down to diversification. Yeah, that's the only way that we can protect ourselves to a degree. So diversification between the asset classes, so shares, listed property, bonds, and cash. And that will look different for every investor because it really is determined by their own goals and risk tolerance. But then very importantly, to diversify within the asset classes. So if we take shares as an example, not to be in 1 or 2 or 10 shares, we really need to spread that across different companies, different sectors, and different jurisdictions. And that way we can kind of reduce the volatility, because all these companies and sectors will react differently to different market events. So if we spread that across a lot of different places, then we can reduce that volatility. And volatility will never go away, but we do protect the portfolio, and we also protect against permanent capital loss, which I think is very important.
Yes, and I think that means that if we talk about these risks, remember, that is the kind of risk that you take on in order to get growth bigger than inflation, in order to beat inflation, in order to have growth stocks in your portfolio. And it's our role to make sure that we balance that risk with the growth. So therefore, when you diversify, you don't diversify only in one theme or one country or one asset class. You diversify through asset classes. That means equities, bonds, stock, cash, local, international, and then within each asset class, there's proper diversification. And that's what we place the emphasis on, so that you share in the growth, you share in the upside, but we also continuously rebalancing within some of the funds, within the portfolios, to make sure that we believe we've got the long-term structure to give you diversified, risk-adjusted returns. I want to change the topic, Stina Marie. We've read quite a bit in the press about possible tax changes or the treatment within collective investment schemes. Now, just collective investment schemes is unit trusts, if we talk about unit trusts. We've read quite a bit in the press about the fact that SARS is looking at changing or the treatment within collective investment schemes or unit trusts. What is our view on that, Stina Marie?
Yeah, so National Treasury has put out a draft amendment. And I think maybe just to emphasize that this is still in the draft phase, and a lot of input is still being gathered from industry to see what the consequences and the implications will be. So it's definitely something that we're looking at and keeping an eye on, but very difficult to take action or to propose changes when we don't exactly know what this will entail and what actually will be implemented at the end of the day. But I think the key ideas of the amendments is, number one, asset for share transactions. So where you take listed shares and that's being transferred into a collective investment scheme or a unit trust. This is currently a tax-neutral event, which means that later on in the unit trust, when the unit trust sells those shares, there's no taxes involved. So a bit of a tax loophole, I think, and I think that's what they're looking to close at the end of the day. So that's the first thing. And then certain mergers of collective investment schemes. And I think we've seen that in the industry where collective investment schemes are managed quite similarly, and they kind of merge these two funds then to run as one. So investors then exchange their units in the one collective investment scheme for units in another investment scheme, again, which is a tax-neutral event, or actually the taxes are just deferred until you then later on sell out of the second collective investment scheme. So the amendment now looks to have the tax triggered when those mergers actually happen and the tax is no longer deferred. And then I think the last one, they talk about distribution of capital nature in a collective investment scheme to change the taxes on that. And we're actually not quite sure exactly what is meant when they talk about capital distribution. So there we're really just awaiting more information so that we can see how it would impact clients and if we need to take any action in that regard.
I think the core message, Stina Marie, it's drafts. There will be some debate, there will be discussions, and although we follow it closely, to take action or to do base a recommendation purely on a draft document will not be prudent. So although we're following it at this point in time, it's draft documents, and should there be any action required in the next months or year or two or whenever the legislation or the changes, the amendments are finalized, we will review and then take it up with clients and see if there is, should we make changes, or if there is formal communication that we should start to engage with clients. So at this point, Stina Marie, thank you very much. We've had a great 9 months. It's been a great year to be invested in markets. I think we highlighted some of the risk elements, but I think it's as long as it's going well, let's enjoy it, and just remember that this type of growth is not. It's an exceptional year, so let's enjoy it. All the best, Tina Marie.
Thanks, Theo. Nice chatting to you.